Two kids. What I'm excited to announce is this is the last new video topic of the year. It's based on what you guys did last time for homework, which was amplitude, frequency, and period, which I looked at the grades on the homework. You guys did fantastic. Most of you got 100 on that. So what I want to do is a quick recap of that. First off, there's two curves, the sine curve and the cosine curve. So, all right, so it was pi over 2, which is 90 degrees. Pi is 180. 3 pi over 2 is 270. And 2 pi is 360. And 1 and negative 1. Now, here's the deal. If the graph hits the origin and then looks like this, right? So if it hits the origin, that's key, then goes up, down, and up like that, right? This is always going to be the sine curve. Y equals A sine BX. So that's the sine curve. Now, as opposed to, and again, so it's going to be pi over 2, pi. These are the unicircle points, so 90, 180, 270, 360, 1, negative 1, right? Now, if the graph starts up high, hits the middle, goes down. If it starts up high and ends up high, right, this curve that looks like this, it's almost like a V, that's our cosine curve. Okay, so sine starts at the origin, goes up and down. Cosine starts up high, goes down, then comes back up again. Now, we talked about what A and B stood for last time. A, if you took the absolute value of that, that's our amplitude. B was what we called our frequency. And then we had a formula called period. Period was the formula 2 pi over b, which is the frequency. And this is super important. It's going to help us out today. It's one cycle of the graph. So what we're going to do today, because you guys, like I said, I looked at the grades. You guys did fantastic on the homework. What we're going to do today is go backwards, where I give you the graphs first, and you find the equation. Now, if you have not printed this out yet or copied down the questions, I highly recommend you do so. It's the practice finding equation of trig graphs. That's super important. So pause me or let me sit here for a minute while you guys do that. So hopefully you printed this out. And what we're going to do is work on equations. Now, always the first thing you're going to want to figure out is if it's sine or cosine. And where you're going to look is if it hits the origin. Now, if it hits the origin means it has to be sine. So I know it's going to be y equals sine. And then I go through my choices. Usually you can eliminate one, but this time they're all sine. Now, let's look at the sine curve I drew a minute ago. See how this hit the origin but went up? Look at this graph. It hits the origin, but it's going down. That means it's got to be negative. So I'm going to put a negative out in front. So that means I can cross off choices A and D. Now, the next thing we want to look at in the equation is the A, the amplitude. And that's how high the picture is going to go. Notice this went up to the number 1. So this amplitude would be 1. How high or how low does this thing go? See how high it goes up to? It goes up to the number 2. That means I'm going to put a 2 there. And that means I can eliminate choice B. So that means it's going to be C. Now let's talk about why it's 1x. All right, let's look at one cycle. You guys see this right here? See how it ends at 2 pi? That's the period. So that means the period equals 2 pi over b. Well, that means the period is 2 pi. So if I do 2 pi over 1 equals 2 pi over b, and I cross multiply, and I need to get b alone, these all cancel, and I get b equals 1, and that's why there's a 1 there. But usually you can eliminate the choices to figure out which is which. All right, now let's take a look at these graphs. It says, which of the following is y equals negative sine x? So first off, it says sine, which means it needs to hit the origin. So it hits here at the origin, it's here. This does not hit the origin, so I'm going to cross it off, and this hits the origin. Okay, now there's a negative out in front. That means going this direction, it's got to go down. So here, look at right this. Now, if you look at this graph, and we continued it, let me get a different color. See how this went up, down? If we were to continue this, it would go up and down again. And as we go this way to be negative, it's got to go down. So this guy's out. Look at C. It's going up. So that's out. But look here at D. It hits the origin and it's going down. So that's why this answer is D. All right, next one. All right, now. Sorry, the puppy was up to no good. I had to corral her. So here we go. Which equation is shown in this graph? Now, does this hit the origin? It does not. That means it cannot be signed if it doesn't hit the origin. So look, guys, right away I can cross them off. Now, next thing, look at the amplitude. So now I know it's y equals cos. All right, how high does it go? It goes up to 1. So I'm going to put a 1 out in front. Well, both of these are 1s. All right, now it's time to look at the period. Now, check this out. This is what a cosine graph usually looks like. It goes down, and then it goes up again. How much of a graph do we see here? Do we see a whole graph or half of a graph, right? We only see half. So that means if I finished it, if this is 2 pi, if I finished it, it would be 4 pi. So that means the period here is 4 pi over 1. Right? And that's got to equal 2 pi over b. Cross multiply. You get 4 pi b. You guys see the puppy just went across. Go here. All right. Divide both sides by 4 pi. The pi's would cancel, and we get a half. So that's going to be a half x. Now, another way of thinking about it, if you like it to do it this way, how much of the graph did we see by 2 pi? We only saw half the graph. That's why that worked out that way. All right, next one. Puppy, calm down now. She's in my lap. All right. Which equation represents this graph? Now look, again, does it hit the origin? Yes. If it hits the origin, that means it has to be sine. So it means I can cross off D. All right. How high does this graph go? It goes up to the number 2. Right? So that means I can cross this guy off. Now, by the time I hit 2 pi, see the 2 pi? Right? Now we're going to ignore over here. Do we see the whole graph or half the graph? And remember, the sine graph, whoops, the sine graph has to look like this. Up, then down. Well, if you notice, if you cover this side up, I don't care about that side. It only goes up. It's only half the graph. So that means I want half x. So C. All right. Now, let's take a look at number 5 and see if you can eliminate some of the choices. Keep in mind we're graphing cosine in this one. So which choices can I eliminate? Well, I'm hoping you're thinking, since it's cosine, it can't hit the origin. Because the only time it's allowed to hit the origin is if it's sine. So, since it's cosine, oh, that hits, whoa, puppy again. Alright, can't hit the origin, so it can't be that one. Oh, this one hits the origin, can't be that one. This one hits the origin. Look at that, guys. With very little work, I was able to pick choice B. All right, couple more. Next one. Now, look at this graph. Just by looking at it, right, is it going to be sine or cosine? And I'm hoping you're thinking the stuffy, it's the origin. That means it has to be sine. So that guy's out. What's the matter, dog? All right, so that's going to be sine. Next thing, how high does it go? What's the highest this thing goes up to? The highest it goes up to is a half, so there's got to be a half in front. So that means we can get rid of A. All right, now finally, we want to see how many graphs we have, or how by 2 pi. Now look here. See how this one had a 2 pi, right? This one had a 2 pi. Look at this one. How far out does it go? It goes out to pi. Now check this out. We have a whole curve. We have one whole curve by pi, regular pi. So if I was to bring this all the way out to 2 pi, doubling it, that means I would fit in how many graphs? 2. We'd get 2 graphs. And that would be C. All right. What's up, buddy? All right, now, is this graph going to be sine or cosine? And I'm hoping you're thinking it's sine because it hits the origin. Okay. Now, is this a positive graph or a negative graph? Well, it's going to be negative because it's going down. So that means I can cross off A and B. Okay? Now, see how it goes down to -3, right? This is going to be a 3 out in front. Now, look at 2 pi. Do we see 1 graph, 2 graphs, or half a graph? Well, we only see half a graph, so we're going to pick D. Okay, stuck the doggy in the other room. D. All right, next one. Does this graph hit the origin? No, it does not. So that means it's got to be cosine. Okay. How high does it go? It goes up to 2. So that means it's got to be a 2 out in front. So I know I can cross those off. Now go to 2 pi. So from here to 2 pi, how much of the graph do I see? I only see half a graph. So that means it's got to be choice C. Okay. See if you can do this whole one without me now. If you need to, pause me, give it a try, and see if you can figure out which one is the correct answer. So I hope you pause me. Hits the origin, so that means it's sine. It goes up, so that means it's positive. It goes up to the number 3. There's a 3 out in front, so I can cross them off. Now look at 2 pi. How many graphs do we see by the time we hit 2 pi? Well, there's 1 up and down. There's another up and down. So there's 2 up and downs. That's choice A. All right, last one now. It says, which graph represents a sound wave that follows a curve whose period is pi, and that is this formula, sine. All right. Now, see if you can eliminate any choices just from the fact that you know it's sine. Well, if it's sine, it's got to hit the origin, so that guy's out. Okay. Then it says we know the period is pi. Period equals pi. Okay. Now, there's a formula for period. What is it? The formula for period is 2 pi over b. And we know it's got to equal this guy, pi over 1. All right, so what I'm going to do now is cross multiply. This guy times this guy is 2 pi. This guy times this guy is b pi. Now, I'm going to get, see how that's a letter B right there in the formula? I'm going to get B alone. Right? So 2 equals B. All right. So that means, you guys, I need to see 2 pictures by the time I hit 2 pi. Which of these graphs, so we know this one's out, which one do we see 2 sine curves by the time we hit 2 pi? Well, here's 2 pi. How many up and downs do I have here? This would mean B is 1, so that's no good. Look at this one. How many up and downs do we see here? Well, there's 1 there, and there's 2 there. That means B equals 2. So right now it looks like it's going to be choice C. How many up and downs do we see here? Well, there's 1, 2, 3 up and downs. So that means B would be 3. We need B to be 2. So that's choice C. So this is a little trickier than the last homework, right? But let's see how you do. We're almost